Hi, everybody. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this holiday week? We have got them because we read the first few chapters of each of the top five free fantasy and sci-fi books on Amazon. And today's list has dinosaurs, warlocks, and vampires, and a time travel romance by New York Times bestselling author. But before we get to that, hi everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV, and I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. And today we were helped out by Alex KOROLOV, Terry Wells, Melody Friedenthal, and E.S. Foster. And Emma is here with us today. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
Before we get to the books themselves, I want to say hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. And we publish these Free Friday stories every single week and these videos on our YouTube channel every single week. So subscribe if you don't want to miss any, or subscribe to our newsletter if you want to get them in your inbox. Okay, and let's get to the books. We're going to start with book number 5 and count down to book number 1. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Here we go. Because you want to read a free book for the holiday weekend. So, Dinosaur Lake by Kathryn Meyer Griffith is the first book in the 8-book Dinosaur Lake sci-fi adventure series. The other books are $5 to $7 each, and they are not in Kindle Unlimited. So, Kindle Unlimited is where you pay 12 bucks a month and you read all the books you want. So, this book is not in that program. And the author has been on our Free Friday list before. Melody read this for us, but since she can't make it today, Emma will be reading her review for us. What did Melody think of this book?
So she starts off by explaining that Henry Shore is a park ranger. He's recently been promoted to chief, but he misses the interactions with the park visitors, so sometimes he relieves his hardworking crew and he leads a tour. So today, at the beginning of the book, he's showing some tourists the very deep crater lake. It was formed by volcanic activity a long time ago, and it's now filled with this icy cold water from rain and snowmelt. So the only living thing in the lakes are some moss and maybe some fish species, but that's what Henry believes. So it turns out it might not actually be the case. So the first chapter, it gives us some geological, historical information, some background about Henry. One, he's a retired New York City policeman. He's married to a woman who is a reporter. They have a daughter and a granddaughter. So Henry and his wife, they both love the park. Henry is devoted to it. All of a sudden, there's an earthquake. The land splits, and Henry and his tour group see bones in the split rock. So they're very large bones. It's definitely bigger than humans or bears. It's definitely something that is not something that you would typically come across nowadays. So the rangers afterwards start finding dead animals. So Melody says this is where things start to get interesting. My guess is that this is where the dinosaur comes in. She says that she's going to be continuing to read more of this over the weekend because of the direction that it's going.
So, um, so what did you think of that?
I thought it had like an interesting premise. It almost reminded me of like old disaster movies, but with likely dinosaurs in them.
There was a TV show set in California about La Brea pits
Oh
that
yeah,
had
yeah.
where people like fell into this pit, and it was actually a portal to the past, and there were dinosaurs there too.
Yeah.
That's what this reminded me of. But I haven't watched that show in a while. I wonder if it's still on. Anyway, moving on to book number 4 on today's list. Let me pull that up and let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Here we go. A Shift in Shadows by Maddox Gray is the first of 7 books in the Lost Legacies, a paranormal fantasy series. The other books are $3 to $6 each, and again, they're not on Kindle Unlimited, and the author has been on our list before. So Terry Wells read this for us, and again, Terry can't make it here today, so I'm going to read this to you. So this is an enemies to lovers book, which Terry says it's a trope that she loves to hate, and I just hate it. Like I hate it. So definitely not something for me. Um, Now she says that the book has some supernatural creatures and dark magic, and she's always intrigued by how authors deal with those elements. So the protagonist of the book, her name is Demain, and she's a 400-year-old feline shapeshifter and magic user. And a century ago, she used to be in love with Sebastian, a warlock, but for the last few decades, she's been trying to kill him. And we have some clues as to why she did that. For example, some vampires have been holding her captive and torturing her on Sebastian orders. And an old friend, a vampire named Magos, rescues her and they fight their way out past all these vampires. So Nemaine is now free, but she's suffering from PTSD. She has nightmares and panic attacks. And each time she has a panic attack, her magic tries to bust out and she's not always able to control it. And as a result, she's destroyed more than one house. So Magos stays with her to help her heal. And it's a he, but he's not a romantic interest. He's more like an uncle. And she's staying in a place that was custom built to accommodate her by a demon, a former lover of her who's now one of her best friends. And there's a lot of space for sparring and lots of different weapons that Nemaine has accumulated in the time that she's been free. And she and Nemaine are sparring in this book, and he always beats her, even though she's been doing martial arts since she was big enough to hold a weapon. And that's because Magus is a vampire, maybe as much as 600 years old, which would make him one of the oldest vampires. So in this magical community that she's in, vampires aren't well liked, and other magical creatures that are around include warlocks, shapeshifters, fae, and demons. And the main grew up in the human realm, and she'd rather stay in the human realm to avoid fae and demon politics. So her birthday's coming up, which would be the first anniversary when Sebastian kidnapped her. She decides she wants to see her friends, but she's a little worried that if she leaves, she'll be kidnapped again. So Terry says there was some interesting world building here, and she does enjoy urban fantasy, but she's not sure how she feels about the protagonist. She's got her share of flaws, and Terry says she's cutting her some slack because of her mental state. And Terry is really, really hoping that Sebastian isn't the enemy who becomes her lover. After what he's done, she doesn't see how he can be redeemed. And she's not sure if she will stick with the book. So she says if you like romances with kick-ass protagonists that are emotionally damaged, and or you like urban fantasy with interesting world building and some pretty intense action and conflict, you might enjoy this book. Um, so I love urban fantasy, so that is something that I would like. I do like action, but I'm also worried about the whole enemies to lovers thing. I kind of prefer books where the protagonist kills her enemies, like really quickly and efficiently. So I really don't like the ones where she winds up like in love with them because that just creeps me out. So yeah. What do you think of the enemies to lovers thing, Emma?
Yeah, I've never enjoyed it that much myself.
Well, I don't know. Some people do, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the whole, redeeming a bad guy kind of thing, or adds tension to I don't know, adds interest to the story. Anyway, let's go on to book number 3 on today's list, which is totally and completely different. Here we go. Fractured Winter by Carter Woods. It's a standalone book of EMP survival, but if you like this author, they've got several other similar books on Amazon, including a few that are part of the 90-book EMP Survival in a Powerless World series. An author has been on our list before. So an EMP is an electromagnetic pulse. It takes out electronics, leaves people unharmed, and in many of these books, the world immediately collapses into chaos. And some people like that. It's a little bit of a survivalist, dream. And I do not like them. But Alex, who reads these books for us, loves them and reads a lot of them. He says they're like potato chips. He can't get enough. So he read this book for us. And so he says that the book starts with Virginia and Keith, a married couple who've been traveling in an RV with their friends for 5 weeks. And their friends, Tony and Adam, are also a couple, and they're about to have a little girl, so the RV trip is kind of a celebration. They're all hanging around a fire together somewhere in Oklahoma, talking and drinking and staying up to see the sunrise. So then in the next chapter, the sun is starting to come up, and they're all watching the sunrise. And Virginia notices that the sun is brighter than usual. The light then becomes overbearingly bright, and then all their cell phones make a weird noise, and a voice announces over their phones that there's an inbound threat, a national curfew is in place, and all air travel has been suspended. In addition, all military personnel are being called in to report to their commanding officer. Then there's a high-pitched ringing from somewhere like, you know, out in the world, and everyone covers their ears until the ringing goes away. And then a strange wind comes at them, shakes the camper violently, and makes their cat run away. After the wind dies down, we learn that all electronics have been fried. So Alex says that he likes this book as far as EMP books go. It does a good job introducing the characters, and it's an unusual EMP blast. So he likes that. There's a lot of buildup before the blast hits, and the EMP blast itself is a physically violent force that shakes things up. And in a lot of EMP stories, the EMP just sort of happens with no physical evidence of warning. So he likes that different approach to it. And he's interested in what happened and what the whole story is. And he says he's planning to keep reading it. All right, then we have book number 2, which I read. And I was going to ask Emma to read the review of number 3 for us. And I totally spaced. Sorry, Emma.
No, it's fine.
But I'm going to read this one, A Twist of Fate by Kelley Armstrong, because I read this book. So let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. And this is the second of 4 books in the A Stitch in Time, a time travel romance series by New York Times bestselling author. And actually, I'm a big liar. I have not read this book. I started reading book 1 in this series. So the other books in the series are $7 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. And because the author is one of my all-time favorites, I was thinking of buying the book, but it turns out my library had it because it's on overdrive. So I just immediately borrowed a copy of the first book in the series. So in case you haven't heard of Kelley Armstrong, she's the author of The Woman of the Other World, a 13-book urban fantasy series, which I've read and loved. I think I've read it more than once. And 10 years ago, Sci-Fi turned that series into a 3-season television show. And I just found that out when doing this review, so I had to go and find it. This series is called Bitten, which is the name of the first book in the series. And Sci-Fi has a few sneak peeks online, some short clips on YouTube, but all 3 seasons are available for sale on Amazon Prime. And they're also free on some streaming service called Philo, which I've never heard of before. But I plan to watch this because she's one of my favorite authors, and they made a TV show about her books. So this is awesome. Anyway, back to today's review. I started reading the first book, A Stitch in Time. The link to the first book is also in the description box below. And it's very different from her other books. So The Woman of the Underworld is a kick-ass urban fantasy, and the protagonist is a werewolf, and there's a lot of like mayhem and murder and stuff like that, which I love. I love it. This is one of those classics of urban fantasy that kind of like set the genre going. So great fun. This book is very different. It starts extremely slowly. The protagonist, Bronwyn, has inherited a haunted house in Yorkshire, and she's also inherited the ghosts who live in it. And Bronwyn is now 38, a history professor in Toronto. Her husband died 8 years earlier, and she hadn't visited this haunted house since she was 15. So it belonged to her aunt and uncle, and she used to go and stay there with them when she was a little kid. And when she was a little kid, she saw ghosts. So anyway, she's driving up to the house because she's going to stay there for the summer because the aunt died and left the house to her. So it looks abandoned, but it's always looked abandoned, even when it wasn't. And a caretaker meets her and takes her inside. And the caretaker has serious doubts that she'll stick it out for the whole summer because, like I said, the house is well known to be haunted. And that night, Bronwyn wakes up because there's a strange face above her, or maybe it's just the moon. And then she sees that the window's open. Maybe there was a draft. And then there's a whisper. And then she thinks maybe she imagined the whisper. Then she hears a yowl, and it's coming from the small bedroom where she used to stay when she visited her aunt and uncle as a child. So the caretaker put her into the master bedroom this time. So she uses the phone as a flashlight, and she goes down the hall to the room where she used to stay, her little childhood bedroom, and she finds a kitten under the old bed, even though the room was completely locked. And she searches the room, and she can't find any place where the kitten could have slipped in. So she feeds the kitten, and she decides that she wants to stay in her old childhood room instead. She finds a mattress, makes the bed, lies down, goes back to sleep. Then she wakes up again, and there's a naked man in bed with her, and they're making out. And she thinks it's one of those weird waking dreams because she's had some psychological issues. And then the man sees her face and jumps out of bed and asks her what she's doing there. And she recognizes his face and his voice. It's a boy that she knew way back when, now all grown up. And then the man disappears. And then we learned some of this backstory. So when she was little and she used to come to this house, she had an imaginary friend called William, a little boy who lived like a couple of hundred years previously. So was he an imaginary friend? Was he a ghost? What was going on, right? Um, and whenever she visited the house, they would play together. And then when she was a teenager, they fell in love. And her parents were separated, and the shrinks told her that the boy was a response to the psychological trauma that she was experiencing. He was just a figment of her imagination, and she got therapy and kind of moved on. And now that she's back in the house, the boy's back, and he's all grown up, and he's like a full-grown man now. But he's still talking like an old-fashioned person from a couple hundred years ago. Anyway, she goes back to bed again. In the morning, she rides a bike to the village, buys some groceries because she's trying to pretend that none of this is happening. And it's all very cozy, romantic ghost story kind of thing, and a cute kitten. So I wrote this review and then went back to like my day job, but it's not really my kind of book. I don't really read romance and time travel romance and all that. But the book sucked me back in, and I went back to reading it. And I mean, yeah, I do love the author's writing. And even though the book is very slowly paced, it is very atmospheric and the tension is building, like what's going on. And so she goes and so she goes back to her bedroom, and she keeps slipping in and out of the 200-year-old version of this house. And when she's back in the 200-year-old version of the house, she sees the guy again, and he's mad at her for leaving, but he also doesn't believe that she was real. He thinks that she was a figment of his imagination. and he's mad at her. He doesn't want to see her again and tells her to leave, but she can't just come and go on command. She doesn't know why she's being pulled forward and backwards through time. So it's all super, super creepy. And there's other ghosts in the house, and they do seem to be ghosts, not time travelers, because, like, her hand passes through them, and they are super, super creepy. And there's a, a girl on the moors who's lost, and she can't save her. Bronwyn can't save her because she's a ghost and can't hear her. There's just all sorts of stuff happening, and the kitten is actually another time traveler because the guy, William, 200 years in the past, his cat just had kittens. And one of her kittens has gone missing. And this is the kitten that Bronwyn finds in the present day. So very mysterious. How does this time travel thing work? Um, I mean, I got caught up in it. And I probably will return to the book. All right, so before we go on to book number one on today's list, which is also a time travel book, I want to thank our Patreon supporters, including the person who um, is the newest supporter of our channel, Christopher Aludi. Thank you so much for supporting us. And all the money that's raised through our Patreon goes to pay for original fiction. We publish short stories, and we've got 3 anthologies up. Here's the third one. We're currently working on our fourth one. All the work done by our editors is unpaid. We're all volunteers, including Emma and me. So all the money donated goes directly to authors to pay for original fiction. And thank you guys so much for your support. We publish original short stories on our website all the time. I think we had 3 short stories up on our website this week. So definitely go check it out. And the links to the anthologies are in the description box below as well. So they make a good Christmas gift if you know anybody who's a sci-fi or fantasy lover. All right, and then on to the number one book on today's sci-fi and fantasy free bestseller list on Amazon. And it is Yestertime by Andrew Cunningham. Here's the cover. It's the first of 4 books in the Yestertime time travel series. The other books are $3 to $6 each, but they are in Kindle Unlimited. And it's the author's first time on our list. And Emma read this for us. Emma, what did you think of this book?
I thought this one had some really good mystery to it. So it starts off with this journalist, Ray. He's on his way to a ghost town. So his best friend has just died from cancer, and his request that his ashes would be spread somewhere people would find interesting. So Ray decides on this ghost town named Hollow Rock because it's near where his friend lived. He traveled all this way. He thought, well, might as well just go to this place because it looks interesting. So he arrives, he spreads the ashes around, there's nobody around. He looks at the different places in the town to see what's up, doesn't really find anything that interesting. And then just as he finishes up, some storm clouds start gathering. And he realizes he can't make it back to his car in time, so he starts running toward this cave that's nearby. It starts pouring down rain. He hurries up the slope, he enters the cave, and while he's hiding out, he discovers this box. So it contains a driver's license, some memory cards, and a note. But the note explains that the author, Stan, will die in 1870 despite being born in 1970. So he's basically saying, like, oh, I've been born at this time. This is why I have the driver's license and the memory cards. But I'm all the way back in 1870, and that's when I'm going to die. So curious, Ray takes the trunk back to his car, and after the rain stops, and he drives back to his hotel. So Ray delves into this research. He gets the memory cards uploaded. The first picture is a picture of Stan living in Hollow Rock, and he knows it's him because it's the same picture as on the driver's license. He knows it's Hollow Rock because he's standing in front of a sign that says Hollow Rock population 228. But Hollow Rock is a ghost town now, so this would have been taken in the past. It looks like the 1870s, just as Stan described in the note. And the second memory card contains the image of a dead man. It looks like he has been shot by a woman. Ray can't tell if it's Stan or not, but he thinks it might be connected to him in that way. So then Ray goes to the local library. He finds out more information about the town as well as Stan. And one thing that he does find about Stan is a missing persons report from 2011. And it's got the picture of Stan. It matches the license, it matches the picture he saw on the memory card. So things are starting to add up, but Ray still has no idea what's happening. It seems like he really was born 100 years after dying. And just as Ray is trying to make sense of everything, two men show up at his door and they ask to speak to him about Stan. So I love time paradox stories. It's one of my favorite things to read in sci-fi. And I was really intrigued by this one when I picked it up. I enjoyed the mystery behind it, but it was the writing style that got me. It was something I couldn't get behind because it was more telling than showing. So it was like, this happened, and then this happened. It's not actually showing me what is going on through imagery or emotion or anything like that. So I don't think I'll personally continue with this story.
All right, so that was it for today's Free Friday list. You got 5 books to pick from. Let us know if any of them strike your interest. Because and these are all books that are on the bestseller list, so people do love them. If you like them, let us know in the comments below. So, and if you don't want to miss any of these reviews, like and subscribe, or get them in your email by signing up for our newsletter. All the links are in the description box below. And if you don't want to leave our channel just yet, we are serializing the book Gods and Monsters by E.E. King, which is a very atmospheric, literary, and kind of groundbreaking novel about vampires during the AIDS epidemic. Uh, like literally a tour de force. And I've got the link to the first installment up above, where the author herself reads the book. We're up to more than 40 installments already and are getting close to the end. And when the book is done being published on our website and on our YouTube channel, there's going to be a print version that you can buy on all the major retailers. So check that out. And there's also another video up there, a recent video from our channel. So thanks, everybody. And thank you, Emma, for joining me. Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Love you guys. See you next Friday. Bye-bye.